time on how I found out I was adopted. So growing up, I felt so different from my family, and the treatment was off as well. So my mom is white and my dad is black. And my brother and sisters are all biracial, and at the time, I thought I was too. My older brother and sister were both light-skinned, they had light eyes, they had curly or wavy hair, and same thing for my little sister. But she honestly looked like a white girl. I mean, if you would straighten her hair, you would have thought that she was just white. And she looked more like my mom than anything. But me, on the other hand, I turned out completely different. I forgot to mention, but my dad is light-skinned as well. I was dark-skinned, I had the regular dark brown eyes, and my hair was extremely kinky. And I recently found out that I have 4B hair. And I never understood how I turned out this way, and the rest of my family was light-skinned. I don't know, I just sometimes felt like I didn't belong in the family, and I wasn't pretty enough. And I definitely sensed something was off because my grandmas and aunts and uncles treated me way different. And I could tell I wasn't their favorite. Sorry I went on a rant, but if you want to know how I found out, come back for part 2. This is part 2 on how I found out I was adopted. So, like I said earlier, I look completely different from my family. Mom's white, dad is black. Anyway, so the day I found out. So, one time in class, we were doing Punnett squares. And at the time, I was in 8th grade. We did Punnett squares with our parents, height, hair, skin, eyes, everything. But my Punnett squares weren't adding up. Like, I didn't get the traits that I'm supposed to have. So, that day after school, I showed my mom the Punnett squares. And my mom said that they weren't accurate and that the Punnett squares aren't a real thing. So I just went on with life again, just thinking that it was fake and that the Punnett square theory was wrong. Then a week later, I went back to school and showed my friends, and I told them, and they said that the Punnett squares were accurate. Then one of them laughed and said, "You must be adopted or something." And when she said that, literally my whole world clicked. Sorry, but it's literally so much to the story. You're going to have to come back for part 3 on how I even asked my parents how I was adopted or if I was adopted. So, sorry. This is part 3 on how I found out I was adopted. So one of my friends said that I must be adopted, and like for a whole month, it was just sitting on me to ask my parents if I was. I was kind of scared because I didn't want to believe that I was actually adopted, but everything was starting to add up from how I looked to how my family treated me, and it's always just been so weird. So one night we were having like a family movie night, and I started crying in the middle of the movie. My dad had paused the movie and asked what was wrong, and I finally asked what's been bothering me. Am I adopted? And my mom looked over to me, and from that look, I could just tell. A couple days later, my parents sat me down and talked about it, told me I was from Kenya, told me about my real mom, and just things that I wish I should have known sooner. Because most of my life, I was questioning my existence. But now I'm 43 years old. I was able to find 2 sisters I had. They were both older than me, and they were also adopted. But I never got to meet my real mom because she passed away before I could meet her. But I'm glad to have met the sisters that I have.
My kids were outside playing with their cousins, and my sister-in-law and mother-in-law and I were chatting in the kitchen. At one point, my 2 ran inside from playing and asked if they could have some M&Ms that they see on the counter. I tell them, no, we'll be eating in 15 minutes. You can have them after dinner. A little bit later, my sister-in-law and I get the call that food is ready, so we go outside and I see my kids each have a little cup full of M&Ms that they are eating. I told my kids that they knew they were not supposed to be eating those and took away the cups. My mother-in-law comes over and says that she gave them the M&Ms and that they can have them. To which I replied, no, they can't. It's dinner time. You were there when I told them no. Mother-in-law says again that they can have some chocolate, it's fine, and tries to take the cups out of my hands. We go back and forth, prompting my wife to start walking over to us just in time to hear her mother say in front of our kids, I'm saying it's okay. They aren't even your kids. They're my daughters. Just give them the chocolate. My wife had her mom repeat herself and said something like, absolutely not, we are leaving. I put the M&Ms on the nearest table, grabbed both kids, who were now softly crying, and started to pack our stuff. The whole event erupted into chaos. Father-in-law screaming about the disrespect of us leaving, grandmother crying, brother-in-law and his wife arguing with their father-in-law, mother-in-law crying that her only daughter is abandoning her. It's a mess. After a couple hours at home, the kids seemed okay, but mother-in-law saying I'm not their mom really scared them. My wife spent about 4 hours on rotating phone calls with all of her family, from father-in-law screaming at her, mother-in-law crying over how we took her grandkids away over M&Ms and made her out to be the bad grandma, brother-in-law trying to get in the drama, grandmother depressed saying she would die without seeing her great-grandkids again. My wife's message to all of them was that mother-in-law needed to apologize to me and to our children for what she said. We made it clear that we would have no problem spending time with grandma and brother-in-law's family, but we would not bring the kids around my mother-in-law until she apologized. As you can guess, the apology hasn't happened, but the phone calls of guilt trips, yelling and crying have not let up. I feel an apology is not even a big deal, and at this point, mother-in-law is making the choice not to see her grandkids. I want to hold firm, but I know how hard this all is on my wife, even if I really don't think it's my fault.
Okay, so story time. So my grandma used to live in a camp area and there was a playground in the back. So we headed there and there was a little girl. She was about 5 and my niece and I were 7 and 8 at the time. She said to my niece and I, "You want to play tag?" So we did because we didn't really want to be mean. So we started playing and then my cousin, we'll call him Jordan, came to tell us the food was ready. So we went to go eat at my grandma's, just to clarify. Anyways, we went to go eat but the food wasn't ready. Don't know why he told us it was, but whatever. So we wanted to go back to the park, just to pass some time. But it was like God was trying to give us a sign not to go back yet. So we just stayed at our grandma's house and waited for the food to be done so we could go back. When we were done, we went back and the little girl was gone. So my niece and I just went out to the park to see if she would come back to play. But she didn't. Then turns out on the news there was a missing girl where my grandma lived.
Me and my husband had our first baby together 3 months ago. We're overjoyed, but like any new parents, we're struggling. My husband recently started posting about how exhausted he is, how having a newborn is exhausting and draining. He posts about everything he does, talks about the fun and calm times he sacrifices, sleepless nights, but he goes to bed at 10 and wakes up at 9. He tells his friends about how demanding it is to be a new parent, completely acting like he's a single dad or something, which is strange because everyone around us noticed how he was acting. He does little compared to me. I do most of the hard work, from feeding, changing diapers, bathing, while he does simple occasional things like going to the store, cleaning the bathtub, or changing the sheets. I was berated by my own parents after seeing his posts. Yesterday, I talked to him about what he's been doing and how he was exaggerating with his posts about his contribution in both our son's care and house chores. I told him he's out there on social media complaining all the time, so much that everyone thinks I'm sleeping 24 hours a day and doing absolutely nothing. He argued that he wasn't lying. I said, well, he wasn't the one who went through the difficult birth experience, that I was struggling for 9 months of intense symptoms and my birth was extremely difficult. I've never experienced anything more difficult in my life and I'm still recovering. I'm not trying to minimize his struggle, but whatever he's dealing with, I'm suffering 10 times more than him. Despite the physical and emotional stress, I keep my mouth shut and just get things done. He snapped, saying he couldn't believe I made it all about me and that he's in the right to be able to vent and say whatever he wants whenever he pleases. I asked him what's up with the attitude. He's making me look bad to everyone and that is not okay. I asked him please stop or get himself some therapy if he's feeling overwhelmed. He looked at me shocked and then argued that I needed to stop policing his words and opinions and trying to tell him what to feel and how to deal with it. He went into the office and minutes later, I saw a new post from him talking about me, thinking he's not doing enough and acting as if me going through childbirth makes me a better parent than he is. I thought he was just venting, but I had family and friends reaching out asking if my husband is okay and why I was making him overwork and not giving him a break.